All right, welcome everyone to today's Google Webmaster Central Office Hours Hangouts. My name is John Mueller. I'm a Webmaster Trends Analyst here at Google in Switzerland. And part of what we do is talk with webmasters and publishers like the ones here in the Hangout today. I set up a bunch of themed Hangouts to kind of focus on individual topics. There are a bunch of questions that were submitted as well for the topic. Today, we're talking about internationalization. So specifically around geo-targeting, hreflang, those kind of topics. So I'll be focusing more on those questions when they come up. I have a short presentation planned for you. I'll go through it a little bit faster than usual, but you're welcome to like grab the video afterwards or just like pause the individual slides to look at them individually. And if there are any questions along the way, feel free to speak up.
May I have one at least right now?
Sure.
OK, the first one is very simple. What about diacritics? You know, those special characters with an accent on them or something like that. Does Google prefer them, is against them, or it doesn't matter if we use diacritics or simple letters?
They're essentially just normal characters for us. So if these are part of the words that you use when you're talking with your users, I would use them. It's not the case that we find them bad or that we find them particularly important. But if that's the way that you write your content in your language, then definitely go for that. Also in the URL, if you have these non-ASCII characters in the URL, that's also fine for us. That's not a problem. The only thing I would watch out for is that they work for your users so that when people try to link to your pages, they can copy and paste the URL, and it kind of works. Whereas if you have, for example, special characters like that, or maybe Chinese, Japanese characters in your URL, and your users don't speak those languages, then it might be hard for them to actually link to your pages.
No, don't talking about URL structure. I gave an example to see exactly what I'm talking about. Two kind of words. So better, first one is better. It's technically the correct one.
Yeah.
Or the second one, or both are the same, and Google is able to realize it's the same keyword, the same word.
Most of the time, we can recognize that. So I would, in a case like that, I would use the correct version, the version that your users use. In search, a lot of times we can recognize that these are essentially synonyms. And when someone searches for one, we show the search results for the other as well. But for the most part, users will probably be searching for the correct one. And
actually, no. In my language, in Romanian, people will most likely search for the second one. Because most people, when using a search engine, especially now with mobiles, they don't use diacritics.
OK. But in cases like that, we probably recognize that these are synonyms. And we just show both versions in the search results. I would just try it out. You'll see how it works.
But you recommend the correct version, so the one
I would use the correct version, yes.
OK, thank you. I'll have another one, but I'll ask it after the presentation.
OK. Let me run through it then, just a little bit. So essentially, at Google, when it comes to search, we try to differentiate between one language in multiple countries and multiple languages, which might also be multiple countries. And that kind of maps to the two main ways that we help people to target their website. The first one is geo-targeting, which is essentially you telling us which country which part of your website is used for. And the second one is hreflang, which is a way of telling us per page which language and which country is relevant. So geo-targeting, like I said, targets one country it needs a clean section of your website. So we need to be able to recognize this subdirectory, this subdomain, or this domain is for this specific country. You can do that also with a country code top-level domain if you want to target the whole domain. It helps to boost your rankings in those countries when people are searching for something local. One thing that always comes up is the new top-level domains. And we treat those as generic top-level domains. So if you use .berlin or .tokyo or whatever, then these are all top-level domains that we think are generic that you have to specify the geo-targeting for. We do not automatically geo-target them. hreflang is a little bit different. It's a tag that you put into the header of your pages. And you tell us, essentially, per page, which other pages are equivalent in other languages for this specific page. So again, there's no special URL structure needed. We just need separate URLs. You can tell us a default language, which means that anyone who is not searching in the languages that you specified will be shown the default version. There are some strict guidelines on the placement and the usage. So this is one of those things where you kind of have to watch out for the technical details. And this doesn't change any of the rankings for your site. So it's really only specific to showing the right version of the URL. All right, some common issues that we've seen with regards to geo-targeting or hreflang is make sure that you also specify any geo-targeting that you have if you do a site move or if you move to HTTPS. Don't forget to specify that in Search Console as well. There's a subtle difference between not selecting the geo-targeting option and selecting it but choosing unlisted. So not selected means that Google will automatically try to figure that out. Unlisted means that you don't want to have any geo-targeting. That means you want to be seen as the same website globally. We recommend not using country code top-level domains as vanity domains. So if there's something really cool that's like .it at the end, and you want to target actually users in France, but you think .it is a nice way to show that your website is about IT, then you need to keep in mind that you're telling Google that your website is actually for Italy. So that's one thing to watch out for. Another really common topic is travel and tourism type sites, where you have content about one country, or maybe you're located in one country, but perhaps your users are actually somewhere else. So if you're selling vacation homes in Spain or rentals in Spain, and you're targeting the UK audience, then you want to geo-target the UK audience, not Spain, not the location of the service that you're providing. With regards to hreflang, like I mentioned before, we have some strict guidelines on where the hreflang needs to be and how it needs to be set up. So we have this documented in our Help Center fairly well. But the important parts are that we need to be able to recognize it in the head of the page, so in the head section of the page, or in the sitemap file, or if you want to use the HTTP header. And the really critical part is it needs to be between the individual versions, back and forth. So your English page needs to point to your French page, and your French page needs to point back to your English page to confirm this markup. And the tricky part here sometimes is that we need to have the link between the canonicals. So not one version that you think is the French version, but actually the version that we index as the French version. So one thing that sometimes shows up that we see is that people have complicated URL structures, and maybe they're not consistent with their choice of canonicals. For us, these pages, like /brand/coffee/machine and /coffee/brand/machine, They might serve the same content, but we will pick one of them to index. And that's the version that you'd need to use for hreflang. So the clearer you can tell us which one to index, the more likely we'll be able to take that into account. Another really common mistake that we see is that we find the link in the wrong place. Or more complicated for the webmasters is you place the link into the head of the page, but actually there's a lot of cruft above the hreflang link, which breaks the head for us. So it implicitly closes the head section of the page, and we see the hreflang markup as being within the body of the page. And in a case like that, we won't be able to take the hreflang into account. So I mentioned canonicalization briefly. The thing to keep in mind is while our systems do choose a canonical, you have a very strong place in making that decision. And you can essentially tell us which one you want to have indexed by being very consistent. So we use a number of factors to determine which URL is the canonical. The main one, I guess, is redirects. We look to see if there's a redirect pointing to one version or the other. Rel canonical is another really strong signal for us. If you specify this is the URL you want to have as a canonical, we'll probably try to pick that one as well. And there's some other factors that we take into account, like internal and external links, if it's in a sitemap file. We look to see if it's in hreflang pairs, if it has HTTPS, if the URL is kind of nicer than the other ones. All kinds of things come into play. And for you, the important part is to make sure that you're consistent with regards to all of these. So if you have one URL as a canonical and you specify a different one in the redirect, then we're stuck in a situation that we have to make this call again. Instead, you probably want to make that decision yourself. So recognize or diagnosing hreflang issues. The important part here is if you go to Search Console to the report with hreflang issues, focus on individual URLs. Don't try to look at the bigger picture for your site, but look at the individual URL pairs and double-check those. So in particular, make sure that you're actually pointing at the canonical. I have some tips here on how to double-check to see which URL is actually canonical for one that you have specified. And then double-check that it's actually in the right location. So it's on the top of the head of the page, or that you're using a sitemap file to let us know about the hreflang link. One question we often see, especially for larger countries, for example, like Russia, is what can I do to target individual sections of the country rather than the whole country itself? And a really common technique is to use personalization, which means to swap out the content on the page depending on the perceived location of the user. So for example, if you have content specific to, let's say, Zurich in Switzerland, and the rest of Switzerland has other content, then you could show users in Zurich a special version of the content. The important thing to keep in mind here is that Googlebot mostly crawls from the US, from California, and it'll probably index the content that users there would be seeing. So if you have something special that you're providing in individual regions or cities, then probably we won't be able to index that individually. So this is something where you might need to structure your site in an appropriate way so that you don't rely on this local regional content being indexed by itself. So one way you could do this is have a generic homepage that works for all countries and have individual blocks that you swap out for individual cities. So that we can index your generic homepage, and anyone can go to that generic homepage and find content there. But if you're from a specific city, then you will be able to get more specific content there. Some common questions that we often see. I wrote down a bunch of more questions based on things that were submitted. What if I just have one country or language version? Do I need to use hreflang? No, you don't, because there's nothing to swap out in the search results. hreflang can be used cross-domain. If it's not recognized, if you can't get rid of the error in Search Console, try using it in a sitemap file. If you're thinking about translating content, that's not seen as duplicate content from our point of view, so that's perfectly fine. If you want to use AMP and hreflang, then I would just link from your main pages. So this is kind of similar as if you would have separate smartphone pages. Ideally, just link from the main version of the page. You don't need to use an xdefault. Which one is better, TLD, subdomain, or subdirectory? They all work. This is something that depends more on your website, on the technical setup on your side. All right, I think that's pretty much it here. Let me run through a bunch of the questions that I see fairly often. I look through my email to see what people have been emailing me about hreflang. And I thought I'd run through a bunch of these, and then we'll open it up to more questions from you here or the ones that were submitted for the Hangout. Can I use more than one language on my homepage? Sure, you can do that. We try to recognize the primary version, the primary language on a page. And that's the version we'll primarily show in search, but we can recognize multiple languages on the same page. What will probably just happen is we will show the translate link in the search results. I see a ton of missing return links in Search Console. My markup is perfect. Can I just ignore these errors? Is Search Console making stuff up? No, Search Console is not making things up. This really means that when we processed your hreflang links, we couldn't find the return link. And a common version here is really that there's something complicated in the head section of your page that's breaking it for us for hreflang. So for example, this would also apply to other meta tags in the head section of the page. So it's worth trying to figure that out. One trick I've sometimes done is to save the version that's shown in the browser and run that HTML through an HTML validator to see if there's anything crazy happening there. Like sometimes we'll see pop-ups in the head, or sometimes we'll see scripts that use document.write to add things to the head. And all of these can break the head. So one way to circumvent that is to put the hreflang links into the sitemap file. Another way is just to make sure that the hreflang links are on top of the head section, so that if something breaks below them, that doesn't really bother you. Our website has 30+ languages. How do I convert user-generated content into those languages? Well, you shouldn't be using automated translations for any of your content that you're providing for indexing. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So if it's user-generated content, you probably need to keep it in those languages. If you have a boilerplate, so the UI, the framework around the content that changes across languages, then that's fine to provide and to use hreflang markup for something like that.
And John, there is one more question there.
Sure.
Actually, there is like suppose how do Google consider as a if I have more than 30+ languages. First, my main language is like English only, and if like first Google converts all languages to English and then it will index, or like it will take a different language consider as different search engines, or like how?
We take the languages as they come. We don't automatically translate them into English and index them like that. We take the content the way you have it provided on your website.
Like different languages are the same content. If then what is how it considered actually?
We just index the words that you provide on your page. So we don't try to translate them into English for indexing. If you have a made-up language that we don't know about on your pages, we will index those words. That's essentially not something where we're trying to understand the words themselves, but over time, if we see a lot of content in a specific language, our systems will try to learn that automatically.
Okay, and one more thing, how do I convert the comments if there is in English? I want to show the same comments in all the languages.
Probably you can't. So one thing that is important for us is that you don't use automated translations for any of your content on your pages. So don't run them through Google Translate and put that on your website. If they're user-generated comments and you have manual translations, then maybe that's something you could do. I assume with user-generated content, people wouldn't be that happy if you translated their comments into other languages. So one thing that I have seen some sites do is that they provide the comments in the original language, and they use a JavaScript to let the user, when they're viewing this page, to automatically translate that. There are a bunch of JavaScript widgets out there that do that for you. And the good part about doing that on demand for the user is that these automated translations wouldn't be indexed, so that wouldn't be a problem for us.
OK, that's fine. Thank you.
Sure. We're based in the UK, but we're owned by an American company. Our main focus is the US market, but we'd like to expand globally. We set geo-targeting to the US. Do we need to change anything? No, you don't necessarily need to change anything if you're trying to be global with one version of your website. Having a website set to the US means that within the US, you will get this kind of boost from geo-targeting. But it doesn't mean that your website will be ranking lower in other countries. So that's perfectly fine to set up like this to start with. If you find that for individual countries, you really need to have local content, you have like a local presence in some countries, then maybe it makes sense to have individual websites or individual parts of your website targeted to those individual countries.
Hello, John.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I have a question. We have a health-related blog. Sometimes we add some information which we get from some well-known health-related website. So when we add those information or data on our website, we add a link to the website from where we get the information, so the reader can verify the information is correct. If we add this type of link to our website, does that affect our website ranking?
No. That wouldn't change anything from the ranking. I think that's useful for users, but that's not something that we'd really focus on.
OK. Thank you.
OK,
right.
If I see people are asking questions, may I have one or two more?
Let me run through some more of the internationalization ones, and then we'll have time for.
These are international.
Oh, OK. OK, of course.
No, now something else. OK, I have three, actually. The first one, you said it's OK if there is mixed language on the page. I don't talk really about mixed language. I just talk about occasionally using English words, which are common used in any country. I don't know, like weekends or for F words. And you have this occasionally in the text. I don't know, maybe 1% of the text. Does this raise any problem? Does it possible to be seen as mixed content, or as long as you have 99% in your language, Google understands that those are just a few words, individual words?
It wouldn't be a problem. So it's not that we would rank your pages any differently, but we would probably or possibly recognize that there's also English on the page, and we might show that translate link in the search results. So
for just a few words?
It kind of depends. So a common case where I have seen this happen is if you have, for example, if you have an English website talking about vacation homes in Spain, then a lot of the addresses, the place names will be Spanish words. And in that case, your main content is in English, but there's a lot of Spanish on the page as well. So we might assume it's both languages on this page.
Okay. Second one, physical server location does have any influence in ranking, as in if I target people in my country only. So let's say I have Romanian language, I target mostly Romanian people. Of course, there are Romanian people abroad, but mostly Romanian people live in Romania. So it makes sense to have a server also in Romania. Of course, one way it makes sense because it's faster loading speed being closer. But from a ranking point of view, is there any difference if server is located in country that is targeted?
Almost never. So if we have no information at all about the geo-targeting for your website, then the server location is something we use. For most websites, they're either on a country code top-level domain, or they use geo-targeting in Search Console, or we can recognize it through other means. And then we just use the information that we have. But if we have a new .com website and we have no information at all, then we will look at the server location and see, oh, it's in Romania. So we'll start with Romania, and maybe that's correct.
But it's now boosting your rankings.
No. It's
Okay.
not that these things add up.
And the last one, it's a bit more weird to say so. I have a friend which is a lot into translation from academic stuff. And what she does is she have this agreement with a few international sites, English, French, and she translates their academic articles in Romanian. She publishes on her site, Romanian site, and she links back to the original article, of course. The original article, because it's an agreement, has a link at the bottom saying if you want to read the version in Romanian, you can read it there on her site. But she's doing that with different sites. What I suggested her was to actually use the href links with those different sites. On each article, to have a href link to various sites, and have those various sites have a link back to her for Romanian language. But that means that each page would href link cross-domain to different domains. So there are about 10 domains like she works with. Is that okay, or would Google see it as something strange because you have href links with that domain and that domain and that domain?
No, that's perfectly fine. I think the harder part will be to implement this correctly on your side. For Google, it doesn't matter at all. If you implement it correctly, we will take that into account. If it's like multiple domains, no problem.
Okay, so since it's done on page, you just take it what's on that page, and the other page doesn't matter that other pages on domain are cross-linking to other domain or no domain at all.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, awesome. That's all for now.
Perfect. OK, let's see. I have a bunch more that I have on my list here. Let's see. How important is the ranking factor to have a TLD of that location? As I mentioned before, we take a number of factors into account for geo-targeting, which is a country code top-level domain, if you have one. Or if you have a generic top-level domain, we use a geo-targeting setting in Search Console. So it's not that you need to have a country code top-level domain. You can also do exactly the same thing with a generic top-level domain in Search Console. The one thing that's kind of non-search related that comes into play here is sometimes users expect to find a country code top-level domain. So this is something where maybe your .com site comes across as this American website, whereas a .fr site might come across as being a good match for French users automatically. So that's more from a marketing point of view than a search point of view. Can hreflang be added dynamically via JavaScript? For example, I use an Angular framework. Yes, that works just the same as anything that you do with JavaScript. If it's visible in the right place when we render the page, we will take that into account. Which country should be specified for disputed territories? For example, if it's unclear which country a region belongs to. That's an interesting question. Not a lot of websites run into this problem. From our point of view, we use the country of that the Google user that is trying to search as the country of that user. So if a user is using Google and they end up in, I don't know, Google Switzerland because the country seems to map to Google Switzerland, or they manually use Google Switzerland, then we will use Switzerland as the location which we will geo-target for. Can I use hreflang on just a part of my website, for example, the home page and the category pages? Yes, that definitely works. I use hreflang for my German content for both Germany and Austria, and they're exactly the same. When I look at the cached version of the page in Google Search, only one of them is shown. Is this a problem? No, this is not a problem by default. We essentially notice the pages are the same. We fold them together. And we still use the hreflang markup to pick the right URL to show to users. If it's a problem for you that we pick one of these pages for caching, then what you need to do is make sure that the pages are significantly different so that we don't see them as being duplicates. But for the most part, that's not something you really need to focus on. What's the best practice for browser language or IP location redirects? Do these work? Should I use 301 or 302 redirects? You can use redirects based on the language or the location. The important part is that you only do this for kind of like a generic bounce page on your website, and the individual target pages that you're redirecting to can be indexed separately. The reason for this is pretty straightforward. Googlebot crawls from the US with a generic setting, and it will probably just see one of these versions if you automatically swap out the content or redirect. The redirect type doesn't matter for us there. But make sure that we can actually crawl and index the individual versions of the page. There's a really good blog post on setting this up from 2014 called Creating the Right Homepage for Your Site, which I would look up if you're doing anything crazy like that. Do I have to do anything special for hreflang when moving to HTTPS? No, you don't need to do anything special, but you need to make sure that your HTTPS links also go to the your hreflang links also go to the HTTPS version of the pages. So if you're changing canonicals, make sure that we can actually recognize that and pick up those new canonicals and understand the link between those pages. Let me just double check to see the other questions that were submitted. Let's see. I think most of these are kind of covered. Yeah. What else is on your mind?
I'll ask an hreflang question.
All right, go for it.
Within Search Console, I see that you think we have 4 hreflang tags. It says 4 hreflang tags, 0 errors. Is there any way to see where you think they are? Because we don't, as far as we know, we don't have any.
OK. I don't think you can look up which ones we actually found. That's an interesting question. Yeah. I don't think you can look that up.
No, it's just one of those graphs where you can click on the various points to see the date and how many errors and how many tags, but you can't actually, nothing comes down below to say which pages you consider those hreflang tags to be on.
Yeah, so the table below is actually meant for errors where we find some hreflang tags, but we can't process them correctly.
Right, and we have no errors, but as far as we have no tags either.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you can look that up. So you probably, if you're really curious, like where this might be coming from, and maybe take a crawler and look at it on your side. I believe with something like Screaming Frog, you can
Screaming
crawl
Frog,
your
yeah.
pages and pull out hreflang as well. I haven't tried that out, but I've seen people write about that.
All right.
All right. There are no more hreflang questions?
Can I
Otherwise,
have,
I'll...
the next one, please.
Yes, go for it.
Will Google penalize or disregard links in one language pointing to a site in another language? And I explain why the links are like this. The site is a vacation home platform, like the one you described, which connect buyers with sellers who don't necessarily speak the same language. So, for example, you can be a German wanting to buy in Spain, and the seller of the property doesn't speak German. So it's possible to link to the site, and yeah?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. That's not a problem at all.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Bogdan, you have a bunch of questions, I heard.
Yeah, but I was giving time to everyone else to ask if I have. Well, since nobody asking.
Sure.
Okay, one thing, basically I'm sure of, but I want a confirmation can show to the guy about. He has this problem about that speed is very important for Google rankings, which I told him that it's not the case because you told us a number of times that as long as the site is fast enough, that's enough. But he still has a problem with this, and he kind of wants to set up a CDN just to be able to give Googlebot a version hosted closer to US, hosted in US, so it doesn't give him a version hosted in Romania. Can you please confirm that this is not needed?
Yeah, you definitely don't need that. I think that there are two aspects where sometimes it makes sense to go overboard with speed. That's the main one is really around crawling more than about anything else, so not specifically for ranking. If you have a website that has a lot of content and it's like, I don't know, millions of URLs that need to be crawled, then if you have a fast server that responds quickly, then we can crawl more. And we'll try to crawl more if we think that this is important content to crawl. But that wouldn't play a role in ranking specifically. So just because your website is faster, because it's on a CDN, doesn't mean that we'll be able to like rank your website higher based on that. The other thing is with a CDN, if you have a really big website and you're only serving the CDN content to Google, then probably we can't really crawl it that fast anyway because your CDN has to pick up the content every time we pick up a new URL. And that almost makes it slower than without a CDN.
Okay, thank you. Next one. Okay, so no, give me a moment. Yeah, it's related to the question the other guy asked before. Where is the site? This site in English, and we want to do a promotion, radio, newspapers in Romania about them. It's also a vacation site, and we want to do this promotion in Romania. This will probably result in quite a lot of people talking, sharing, linking from Romanian people linking to that site, sharing that site, things like that. So there will be quite a big influx of links from Romanian sites in Romanian language to that site, and I expect the effect to be considerable. So it will raise to maybe 10%, 20% of their links coming from sites in Romanian language. Would that look weird for Google?
No, that's perfectly fine. That's not something where we would say, oh, all of these Romanian people, they must be crazy. We will ignore their links. I don't think that would make sense.
No, I think it might look a bit artificial having in 1 month coming 1,000 links from Romania when we had maybe 50 links from Romania before. There were no such thing.
I think that can happen. It's not automatically something that we would consider being bad.
Okay, thank you. I have a few more, but I'll wait. 2 more people joined. Maybe they have some questions too.
All right. More hreflang questions or geo-targeting or general search questions as well.
Looks not. May I have one more?
Go for it. Okay.
Okay, still related with a previous question. If you have a Romanian only site, a site in Romanian language, Romanian top level domain, basically it's just Romanian. Does Google expect most links to be from other Romanian sites? Is there anything bad or anything good if number of links comes from English sites, for example?
No, I think that would also be perfectly fine. Yeah. Sometimes things also go viral in individual countries separately, and we try to reflect that. But it's not the case that we would say these are always bad links that we would ignore. So for example, something that sometimes also happens is that an English site suddenly gets a lot of links from Chinese websites or people that are writing in Chinese. And just because it's a language that you don't understand and you don't know why these people are linking doesn't mean that these are problematic links that you need to block or that you need to ignore or disavow. They might just be normal Chinese people on the internet who are linking to your website. So that's something that I think we see a lot less of within Europe because there are automatically all these different countries and languages around. But especially when it comes to websites in the US, I get this question a lot. It's like, I got a bunch of foreign links that I don't understand why they're linking to my website. I don't understand their language. Is this a bad thing? And that's not automatically a bad thing. That said, there are sometimes really crazy spammer scripts that are out there that are placing links on all kinds of websites. And sometimes that results in a lot of links on Chinese forums or on Russian websites or Polish websites or German websites or whatever. And it's more a matter for us, like, what is behind these links than a matter for us, like, is it the same language? Is it the same type of user?
How .eu domains are seen? Global ones, just like .com?
Which ones?
.eu, European Union.
Those are global, yes. That's it's also .asia is another one where the domain theoretically is supposed to apply to a group of countries. When it comes to search, we only map domains to an individual country, unless they're global domains. So that's something where we wouldn't say this automatically geo-targets European countries. It's also kind of unfair for people in Switzerland, because as far as I know, people in Switzerland can't buy .eu domains because Switzerland is in the middle of Europe, but it's not a part of Europe. So that would make it kind of weird with regards to search anyway.
Okay, and the last one. If I have a site and I buy a couple of domains, including top-level domains, pretty much securing my domains. All of them are redirected to, let's say, my site.ro. But I have also .french, .it, .da, .co.uk, .com, .org, everything like that. But they all are redirected to my main domain, which is .ro, Romania. Is there any possible conflict with the language domain because people are maybe entering at my domain.it when they're from Italy, but end up on the raw version?
That's usually no problem. So if you're not buying expired domains and doing any crazy schemes.
Exactly same name of a domain, but with Maybe
then-
all of language. This guy has, I think, 80 domain names with a lot of language variations or something, and all of them are parked on the same domain.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. From our point of view, that's fine. One thing that might happen, which might be confusing, is that if we see, for example, the .fr domain redirect to your .ro domain, then we might show the .fr domain to users in France because we think this kind of shows that your website is actually more relevant for users in France. Which can be kind of confusing because actually it redirects to your .ro domain. But from our point of view, that tries to show the users locally that actually you do have a local domain, and probably you might have something that's valuable for them too.
But link factors and everything are accumulated, right? So if someone links to FR and someone to IT.
Exactly, yeah. So the links, they always go between two canonicals. And if you're redirecting to your .ro domain, if you have rel canonical on .ro, then we will choose that as a canonical. And the link will be between the original source and your canonical, even if there are redirects in between.
Is recommended to do a specific redirect or rel canonical, or it's OK if he just parked those domains on?
Yeah, I would try to use a server-side redirect, so either 301 or 302. Probably a 301 would be the more correct one here because it's a permanent redirect. So that's probably what I would aim for. I wouldn't use a JavaScript redirect just there because it just makes everything so much slower.
I see. So if you want to redirect all of them to main domain. OK.
Sure.
Thank you. That all well. If nobody.
That sounds good. OK, looks like there's another question in the chat. So I have a website which provides training. My problem is all 3 pages have almost the same content and give a JavaScript course. Will these pages count as duplicate content? What's the best practice to rank all 3 pages in the search results? So I didn't look at the individual pages there. But for the most part, if they're duplicates, then I think we should treat them as duplicates in search, and we should fold them together and try to rank one page. The advantage of folding them together and having one page is that you have a stronger page in the search results. So instead of having 3 pages that each rank on page 3 or page 4 of the search results, maybe you have one page that ranks on page 1 or page 2 of the search results. So having multiple pages for the same content isn't necessarily better. That's, I think, the main thing to watch out for. It's not that we would demote a website for having duplicate content or penalize it in any way. But we think folding things together makes more sense from a practical indexing point of view, but also from a ranking point of view. If these are supposed to have different content and be seen as different pages, then make sure that they're really significantly different when it comes to the content on there, that you're really targeting a different kind of person who's looking for something different. So don't just like twist the keywords around and use synonyms for individual words to make them look different, but really target individual users and say, hey, this Java course is for people who are in one location, or for people who have this kind of background, or people who have studied this kind of other languages as well. So that might make sense to have as separate pages. Even in some of those cases, maybe it makes more sense to fold them into one stronger page rather than having multiple kind of weaker or diluted pages. And the same applies to international websites as well, to different languages as well. So if you have content in English and you think, oh, this is relevant for users in the UK, in Australia, in the US, in other English-speaking countries, then just taking the same content and splitting it across multiple domains doesn't make that content better. It just means that all of those individual pages, they have to collect signals on their own and be relevant on their own to also show up in search, compared to having one really strong version of that English language page that's automatically relevant for all countries that speak English. So just because you can set up geo-targeting and hreflang doesn't mean that it's always the best solution. All right, one last question, if anyone has anything. No? Okay.
No one. Hey, no. If no one, I have one more.
Okay, go for it, Bogdan. Yes.
You remember my strange politician friend with that site I told you who wants to have only one blog post on the main page and subsequent pages, and we discussed that it's not really recommended. I suggested him a different thing. On categories pages, he agreed to have only snippets of links. Though what I suggested was two things. First one was to block subsequent pages on the main page, so his domain /2/3/4, things like that. And second thing was, if we can't add things to the page itself, I thought on adding things on the main page itself to make it differentiate from the article. So I suggested him to add a footer text at the bottom saying which appears on the main page, pretty much saying what he's doing, who he is, something like a short resume or something like that. So the main page now looks different than the article page because main page has something extra and the direct page has the comments and things like that. And the second, third, fourth page from the home page are no longer indexable. Is that good advice I gave him, or?
That sounds great. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. All right. So let me wrap up here. There were a bunch of questions that didn't quite fit the internationalization topic, so I skipped those that were submitted. If you're really worried about these questions, make sure you get them into one of the themed Hangouts that are planned, or maybe just do a post in in the Webmaster Help Forum, and someone else can take a quick look at those as well to kind of give you some advice there too. I'll have more generic Hangouts probably later on. I don't know if they'll be this year, though. So
on Wednesday, we have structured data, right?
Yes. So next Tuesday, we have structured data. Then, I don't know, Search Console is coming up as well. So some of the topics that came up. On Tuesday, we have someone from the structured data team to present some stuff as well. So that should be really interesting.
And Wednesday is the AMP.
Wednesday is AMP, yes. That's another one. We have a bunch of stuff planned.
You should hire me as a personal assistant.
Yes, OK. Great. All right.
Thank you, John.
Thank you all for all of your questions, for your patience and watching. And I hope this was interesting to you. And I hope the next Hangouts are interesting as well. And with that, I wish you all a great weekend. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, John.
You too. Bye.
Yeah.